Design Thinking, How to Make Virtual Problem Solving Work by Adam William. So Adam is a founder of Treehouse Innovation and one of the creators of Sprint-Based. He spent most of his career helping companies design new products, services, and strategies and develop their internal design capabilities. Now, over the last 2 decades, Adam has led numerous innovation projects and transformation initiatives for organizations including Sony, PlayStation, Deloitte, NBC Universal, Sky, DLA Piper, and eBay. In recent years, Adam's focus has been on helping remote teams apply the process, tools, and mindsets of design thinking in a virtual context. Now, let me take you guys through a brief introduction of QAI and QGLUE. So QAI is a 25+ years transnational global advisory, consultancy, and workforce development organization that enables and promotes operational excellence and is a pioneer in the field. Established in Orlando, USA in 1980 by William Perry, QAI now has offices across the globe and has been at the forefront of India's quality journey. So we've conducted assignments in 35+ countries for 400+ consulting customers and engaged with 50+ ministries, departments, and governments. Now, QGLUE is a design and innovation arm of QAI that is helping accelerate design-led innovation through a variety of interventions. Now, while QAI addresses operational excellence, QGLUE uses design-led practices to help businesses build services that people will love and that will impact the world around them. So using a human-centered approach, QGLUE equips people to solve complex problems by helping them reach a solution that's not just right, but also desirable. So leading thought leaders and practitioners across the industry have come together in QGLUE to create an entity leveraging on the legacy and foundations of QAI. Now, before we get started, a couple of items. So firstly, if you have any questions or queries or discussion points, please put them in the chat window option on the GoToWebinar tab. And we will take them up in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the webinar. Also, we'll be enabling some live polls, which will be up on your screen, and you can vote on them in real time. Now, we face some issue wherein people were not able to vote. This happens when your GoToWebinar screen is on full screen mode. So if you want to participate in the polls, just take it off full screen and you'll be able to vote in the polls. And the results will be shared then and there. And, so please do participate. So, all right, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. And over to you, Adam.
Great. Thank you very much. Just sharing my screen here, confirming everybody can see me. Wonderful. And I'll turn my video on too now as well. Okay, everybody. Well, hello. My name's Adam Billing. I'm very, very happy to be here. As you've heard, I'm the founder of a company called Treehouse Innovation, as well as Sprint-Based, which we'll be telling you a little bit more about. So just to give you a little bit of sense of kind of who I am, where I come from. So we're a London-based entity. So I'm talking to you guys all from a very cloudy London, England today. But as you can probably tell from the accent, this isn't my original home. I'm actually from Cincinnati, Ohio, originally. But I run a company here called Treehouse Innovation. We've been around for about 10 years. And as Vika said, it's all about designing things, helping all kinds of different organizations create new strategies, new processes, new products, new services. And as you can see, it's all kinds of different organizations that we work with, and we help them on sort of like a consulting basis. We'll be in there working with them for weeks or months to design something, sometimes even longer. And then also we do lots of training and capability building, so helping these organizations get better at doing this stuff. And the team is very multidisciplinary. So we've got folks who come from an innovation background. We got a few members of IDEO who've joined us over the years, people from Fujitsu, people from consulting like PwC and all over the place. And we've got, sort of designers as well as technologists, developers, and, kind of a small but very, very multidisciplinary little team. But at the heart of everything that we do is this methodology of design thinking, which I'm going to imagine that as you guys have all selected of your own free will to join this webinar, you have probably some sense of what it's all about at least. But just as a kind of a quick kind of context setting, whether we're training, building capability for a client, or whether we're in the field, working. Like for example, right now we're in the middle of a big project to redesign the clinical trial experience for pharmaceuticals. Also working on like the house of the future with a university in the Middle East. even though those are very simple, or very different, the same simple kind of concepts always permeate everything we do. And at the heart of that is this notion of, as opposed to starting with what is feasible, in other words, what we can do or implement right now, or viable, what we know is going to make money, have a business case, we always start with what is desirable, which is at the heart of design thinking. So that's really the fundamental of what we do and what we have always done, and keeping in mind that it's something that we have done primarily on a face-to-face basis for most of our careers as a team. Before I get into the rest of kind of the content, talking about how we do this virtually and all the good things we're going to be talking about here, I wanted to get a little sense of who we've got on the webinar today, just so kind of know where you guys are coming from. So we've just popped up a poll question there. If you take a second and just let us know which of these best describes your current role.
Okay, guys, you have 30 seconds to vote. The poll is live. Don't forget to minimize your screen in case you want to participate.
Yeah.
Okay, so Adam, I see the responses are quite varied, which is nice.
Yes. No, that's always good. And I'm seeing a large percentage in the others category too. So if you've got something that you can pop that into the chat, or what's the best way to, if you want to talk about what that other is, where should someone put that?
I think you guys can put it in the chat window. I think that'll be perfect. And we are now closing the poll, so the results will also be up on the screen. So here we have it.
Okay, great. Good. Okay, interesting. So yeah, it is a very, very, very diverse group that we've got here, which is wonderful. So that's excellent to know. Thank you for doing that, everybody. And we have another quick kind of follow-up question. This one really related to design thinking as a methodology. How familiar are you with this approach? You know, would you say you're a seasoned pro, do it all the time? Something you practice occasionally, maybe something you're aware of, but you know, not really used it, or completely new, but curious to check it out?
Okay. Again, we give them 30 seconds.
Okay, so you guys are getting very fast at this. This is excellent. So lots of the occasional practitioner. We got a couple of seasoned pros in there, and a few newbies. Good stuff.
No, another 5 seconds. This one seems to be heavily biased in one option.
Yeah.
Major.
Yeah. So it looks like I can imagine if we graphed this out, we would have something that looks like a kind of a normal distribution kind of bell curve. Look to it. Yep, there it is. Good. All right, good. So what I'm taking from this is we've got a lot of design thinking knowledge in the room. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time explaining what it is, just going to kind of talk about it into the basics, and then we're going to move right into how do we make this work virtually. Okay, so thanks again for doing that, guys. That's really helpful. So here's a design thinking process. Now, you know, for those of you who are practitioners and have seen this before, there's about 1,000,001 different ways of articulating the same kind of process, right? It always involves, you know, first going out and gathering some field research, some empathy from your users, forming some insights into what they really care about, then getting more focused on our challenge based on what we've learned, then, you know, generating lots of ideas, brainstorming, voting the best ones, you know, through as a group, deciding what we're going to take forward to prototyping. Then it's all about, you know, rough and ready prototypes, and then what do we take on to implement? And then you can even simplify this further of saying kind of 3 main phases of the empathy, figuring out, you know, what people care about, ideate, coming up with the ideas, and prototype, testing them out. Now, this kind of work is typically done in person, right? It's a lot of hands-on kind of work. Is defined by that in a lot of ways. You know, when we do our empathy building, we like to be in situ with people. We like to be conducting those interviews where people live and where they work, where they socialize. Ideation, we love that buzz of getting people all in a room and you know, generating lots of ideas and having those ideas collide off of one another. And then prototyping, it is by nature a very physical, tactile activity, and we love to be able to to put together, whether it's a paper prototype or physical or digital, but be there to show someone and kind of get their reaction, let them touch it, or at least see their reaction to it. So given the kind of hands-on nature of design thinking as a way of working, it does raise the question, how do we do these things virtually? And not just do them virtually, but do them virtually well and get the kind of impact that we're looking for out of a remote kind of arrangement. So in this webinar, the things that we're going to hit, we're really focusing on that concept, doing it virtually and doing it well. So we're going to share a little bit about what we've learned over the past few years, because we have started down this road a bit earlier than most. And we're very lucky that sort of we started making the move to virtual design thinking about 3 years ago now. We've learned a lot, so we're going to share what we've learned, some of the big lessons over that time. We're going to talk about not just overcoming some of those obvious barriers that we think about, but kind of the advantages that you can get from doing this remotely, because there really are some, and they're very significant. And we're going to do this really by way of telling you some stories and introducing you to some really cool organizations that we've had the privilege of working with over the years, but really focusing too on those organizations that have had to make that shift very recently and in a big way because of COVID-19. Okay, so last polling question here for you guys, which is, we're talking about design thinking, a great way of solving complex problems, but now we're remote. You know, how does your organization, how would you describe your ability to tackle these challenges remotely? Is it something you do all the time? Is it something that you do only when you have to, but feel you're not so great at it? Or is it something we just don't do for the important stuff until we can actually get face to face? Would love to hear how virtual problem solving works for you guys.
All right, again, the poll is live and you have 30 seconds to vote.
Okay.
Okay, so one option seems to be not used by anyone.
Good stuff. I think that's given us a pretty clear picture. Yeah. And not surprising, no one is in that third category yet, or at least no one is admitting to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're all either in that top. We do it a lot. We've got that confidence, or when we do it, we're not so great at it. But it's all in that kind of upper bit. Good, excellent, guys. That's much appreciated. That helps a lot. Okay, so for those of you who are seasoned at it, or those of you who are trying it out but not maybe amazing at it, especially for those folks who know design thinking and have some experience, just enter into the chat. What are some of the things that you have experienced or would imagine are going to be the biggest barriers to doing design thinking well remotely? So just go ahead and because am I right, the best place to do is just enter that right into the chat, or is there a better place to do that?
No, the chat is perfect.
Great.
So guys, we'll give you a minute. Just go ahead and put in your responses.
What do you think gets in the way?
So we have some coming up. There's assumptions and empathy. Then there's another one that says to keep participants engaged and have them aligned on a common goal.
You got it. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Communication. Not everyone is on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah.
To do the exercises live with participants.
Yeah. Getting prototypes tested. Oh, absolutely. Observation tools. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. How to build. Okay, this is great, and we can't facilitate when we do face to face. Yeah, guys. I mean, you're hitting the big stuff there. I mean, that is absolutely, that is a hit list of those challenges. So that's really good. I mean, we've pulled together a little list here that I think you'll see looks pretty familiar to the things that are showing up in the chat. So we talk about that. How do you reproduce that face-to-face magic that comes, that group creativity? How do you keep people on track, right? It's so that temptation of WhatsApp has popped up, or just getting distracted by all the many things that happen when we're doing virtually. How do you overcome that? How do you make people accountable? How do you get tangible outputs? Using the right methods, that's been picked up in our chat here. And also, one of the things that design thinking, really draws on is the ability to make that kind of energy and fun happen. And that can be a lot more challenging when you're doing things remotely. So those were a lot of the big challenges that we knew, I was saying a few years back when we started going into this remote space, we knew that we had to wrangle with. Now, I'm going to quickly show you what Sprint Base is, because some of the stories that I'm going to be telling you were done on that platform, using that platform, but the lessons aren't specific to that platform. That's just the platform that we built and the one that we've used. But I think the kind of messages that are going to come out of this session aren't just about using Sprint Base by any means. But this is the platform that we created, and we designed it to try to overcome some of those barriers that we're talking about here. So first of all, it is built around a structured process, so that does help keep people on track. So they're sort of moving from phase to phase together as a team. There's a lot of built-in guidance, so every step on the process, here are the tools you need to use, here's how to use them, here are some top tips, right? So we tried to build a lot of that stuff in to keep people on track. I mean, the way they collaborate is very visual, so they can go out. If they're doing field research, they can upload, video, upload content, to the workspace using their mobile, and then they can go in and comment and share and cluster and organize everything collaboratively. We've done these, workshops and projects using this platform with teams that have been distributed literally all around the world, to even teams within a single company, just in different offices, but just gives that kind of home base. We've got lots of sort of interactive templates, things that you would expect, sort of personas and user journeys, all can be built out with sort of digital post-it notes, so trying to bring that kind of energy into it. And then a lot of kind of creative tools, and so being able to do sketches live, and again, being able to share and comment and get feedback on those things. And one of the things I heard in there was how to get feedback, when you're in a virtual place. One of the things that we very much from user suggestions, we built in a feedback function that allows you to, if you've created a storyboard or any kind of concept, you can share it with you could be a customer, could be a peer, colleague, whomever, and they just get a little form that allows them to give you feedback, what they like, what they wish could be better, that goes right back into the system. So that was a big barrier. How do we get that feedback? So we try to solve it that way. And then throughout the project, you get kind of analytics of how much did you create, how's the team performing, and a big PDF report of the whole thing. So that's what the platform looks like. So when you see these stories, you can kind of visualize what people were using. People use it for all kinds of stuff. It could be as short as like a 2-hour workshop, all the way out to multi-week sprints or multi-month engagements. So it's pretty flexible there. Now, in building this with that lovely team of folks that I showed you at the beginning, we all came with a good decade or two of design experience under our belt, but taking it to a virtual place was harder than we thought, to be honest. We learned a lot along the way, and we made a lot of mistakes. So I'm just going to talk about a few of those and impact some of those learnings, and hopefully enable you to avoid some of those pitfalls that we hit head on. I think our first mistake, I would say, and this is the big one, which is trying to replicate the face-to-face experience virtually. So just trying to copy it and do the same things we do face-to-face, but just do them online. And I'm going to tell a quick story about that. This is a fellow named Leon. We met Leon a couple of years ago. He's in a very large global consultancy that we've worked with for a few years. And we were doing a couple-day training for them up at the University of Cambridge. So I teach up there as a lot of their executive programs, as do a few other members of our team here. And we had a group there, 2 days, kind of introduction to design thinking, kind of experiential, hands-on, in person, they got it. And some senior leaders in his firm said, okay, anyone who wants to run a project virtually after this program, put your hands up, we'll sponsor a challenge. And that's the first thing this guy did. He was a young graduate, one of the youngest people we trained up there, but he was super keen and said, "Yep, I'll take a challenge." So tell you a little bit about him. We'll tell you about the challenge that they face. So that's Leon's team in the UK. Now these guys all work in the SAP practice, where they do a lot of collaboration with the team in Bangalore to take the code that's largely created there, and then they sort of modularize that to deal with the clients in the UK and Europe. And the challenge that these guys were given was to look at the collaboration between the UK and Bangalore, because it was kind of broken. Things weren't showing up fit for purpose. Communication was really bad, and it was really an issue. So Leon's team had this challenge of, how do we fix collaboration between the UK and Bangalore? But now the team that he got to work with on this sprint, on this project, wasn't his team in the UK. In fact, it was just one UK colleague and then 5 developers who were based in Bangalore. But they all had that challenge of, how do we fix this collaboration? They had about 4 weeks to do it. We gave them a little bit of coaching support, but not a lot. So first thing, they're doing some field research, and things started popping up right away. We started hearing from those teams on the ground things like, they don't know where this code ends up. They don't know what purpose it solves, or what purpose it serves, what problem it solves for the end user. They're completely, blind to that. So that was an issue. Making it fit for purpose is tough when you don't fully see that end application. Other things too, like systems that had been defunct for ages that people didn't realize were no longer working, and the kind of mobility in between teams and the kind of speed at which they were bringing in new hires in Bangalore and making that sort of knowledge transfer work. All this stuff started to bubble up really quickly through the field research, much of which was being conducted by the majority of the team, which was the Bangalore-based development guys. When we started to get to ideas, again, things started to pop pretty quickly. And what we saw that was really cool, which is they didn't just do brainstorming and stuff within their teams. They went out and engaged other people who weren't on the project to contribute. And then they would just kind of upload the best of the best. And kind of one of the biggest surprises we got out of this whole experience was we went into it very inaccurately, thinking that because we've got very analytical type guys, we got developers, we weren't expecting wild creativity, which was just an absolutely busted stereotype. We couldn't have been more wrong. When we started seeing the prototypes that were being developed, they were really creative, really wild, and really effective. I mean, this was one of my favorites. This is something one of the team created that shows a new way of onboarding new hires, so they're oriented to the process as well as what, how their development work is contributing to the larger project and the ultimate client outcomes. And this was a really impressive project, and it's something they took with, ran with, and developed and have been implementing since. And there's no way we would have gotten it if we hadn't been working with that team that we had actually assembled together, because all that stuff came from them. So a few of the things that we took from it, and mainly these were kind of some of those hidden advantages I was talking about. When you go remote with design thinking work, you get a lot better chance of valuable voices getting heard, right? You don't have to just, rely on who we can get to one place. I don't think, to solve that challenge, I don't think they would have ever flown the UK guys to Bangalore or the Bangalore guys to the UK, for a 5-day sprint or a 3-day workshop, whatever. But working this way, you get that input, and it was that input that really got us there. Introverts unleashed, this idea of not everybody thrives in a face-to-face workshop where it's sometimes, the loudest voice prevails. A lot of folks really value a bit of time to reflect and consider their ideas, and then bang, you get these real bursts of creativity, which we saw over and over from this group, and we've seen in many groups since. There's a lot more individual accountability, and it's something that we hadn't really thought about when we started. When you're working digitally, there's a much cleaner trail of who contributed what, how much engagement have they actually had, which you don't always get when, so you get a sense maybe someone's not pulling their weight face to face, but here there's really clear accountability. Flexible teams and time frames. So yeah, working around your schedule, being creative when you're feeling that creativity, and also being able to engage lots of different people. And then the big thing too, we had Leon. Guy had been trained for 2 days, and here he was getting real results with design thinking, with a remote team. And that was just really encouraging to see, how kind of empowered he was to do that. So those are some of the big advantages, and those, we learned a lot from that project, but they demonstrate themselves over and over. So as I go through these next couple of examples and unpack some more of the lessons, these do kind of prevail and sort of cut across. The next kind of mistake we made, we took a very sort of conservative approach to thinking, how would people be adopting this? So we were very much in the mindset of, you do a bit of face-to-face, and then you do a bit of virtual, and you come back face-to-face. And what we found, especially now with COVID, is that it can be absolutely all or nothing. And with COVID, it became all or nothing really fast. And over the last month or two, we've been working with a lot of different organizations to help them respond to this big shift really quickly. So I'm gonna tell you a quick story about InnoDays. You might be aware of these guys. They do really cool in-person hackathons. They partner big corporates with top universities, and we were working with them with UC Berkeley a month or two ago. And it's usually a 48-hour, so very, very compressed 48-hour sprint where they are tackling a big challenge. This one was around mobility. And they came to us and basically said, can we still do this? Can we take these in-person events and that we've already got planned, and can we make it completely virtual? So we had some questions going in, like, will this work? Will it be possible? We got people, we were going to fly all together. Can we actually make this work well over 48 hours? Right? That was always their constraint. And then, these events were known for like the buzz and the energy. How do we make it fun and exciting and kind of deliver on what's being expected from the 80 participants that they were bringing together? Sort of 40 from corporates, 40 from universities all over the world. And I think the best way to kind of give you a sense of what this crew here that you see experienced, they actually did a quick video that kind of documented their experience. And I think it does a good job of calling out what it was like to work that way, but also, again, some of those advantages that you can get from going remote and how to tap into those. So I'm going to share my video with you now. Okay. And action.
The highlight is the fact that we've managed to do this at all with 80 people from 4 different continents, speaking different languages in lots of different time zones, using different digital tools. A lot of people working together for the very first time. It's amazing to see what we actually produced in that time frame, and the ideas that have come out are fantastic.
And especially a virtual event like this that is spread across several continents, we're really able to source some of the different cultural aspects that are important to different countries or different groups. And I think that perspective, being able to pull that together so quickly, was really amazing. And so I think, in effect, we've been able to enable a practically zero carbon, extremely inclusive global innovation forum.
We can now innovate with this follow the sun principle around the globe with young, bright minds, and that is absolutely cool.
There's all this worry outside, and just seeing everybody only focused on solutions and doing things great, that was really inspiring.
I would almost say I was able to connect with more teams, I think, than I would have in person.
So I really never felt like there was something missing that we only would have if we are physically together.
Alongside the practical benefits that will come from the ideas that have been created here, I think that exposing our colleagues and opening their minds is incredibly beneficial for us.
Okay, so guys, switch back. All right, good. So so that was their experience, and it was just an absolute thrill to work with them and making that happen. And one of the quotes that came out, I really like this. It's just, he's talking about how what they've been able to do is enable this practically zero carbon, extremely inclusive global forum. And somehow you can quickly source people, ideas, get different approaches, and it really just kind of shows you the positives that are available when you kind of stop thinking about how do we kind of recreate what we're used to doing to actually hold on what's possible if we just really lean into this virtual approach, which these guys did a wonderful job on. So takeaways from this, and that's the big one, right, is focus on what you can do, not what you can't. There is no substitute for face-to-face. It's its own specific thing, but there are things that are possible only when you go remote. So focusing on those is going to get you to a better outcome. You might have noticed in that video, they weren't just using sprint-based, they were using a few other things as well, some really cool prototyping software. They're using Slack, they're using Zoom or other teleconferencing, video conferencing platforms, and they just put them together in a really nice way. I mean, so I think it's a kind of a maybe mundane sort of point, but one of the things that's got to be there is a solid grasp on the tech that you're using, and use a few simple things that complement each other and just get your team engaged and used to them quickly. They did a great job of using time zones to their advantage. I mean, so around the clock working isn't new, but I think they've kind of taken it to the next level, and we've been seeing more of that as people are practicing it more and getting better at it. And one thing they did too really well is keeping people at the center. In other words, they kept a lot of coaching, mentoring between the corporates and the students. There was loads of conversation. It didn't all just become a screen-based or software-based interaction. This was real people talking to each other throughout the whole thing, and that's still where that magic comes from. Last story I want to share with you guys is based on this assumption that really massive transformative impact is going to need more than a couple of weeks to happen, especially if you're working virtually. So there's this kind of assumption that we did take with us. We would say, well, how long would we need to tackle this? And we would say, oh yeah, if we're going virtual, it's going to be longer. It's going to be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. We started to think in those time frames. But one of the things that we learned is you can actually do more faster when you're working remotely, and that's been a big wake up for us. And I've got a great story here. This was about a company called Hal Bottle. If you've not heard of them, check them out. They do really cool stuff. They're based in China. What they do is so they're a fashion company fundamentally, but what they do is they take plastic bottles as their primary component, and they have a process for turning it into really slick clothing. So that's what Hal Bottle does. Okay, they've done some really cool stuff. Like you've got this 24 plastic bottles goes into into this bag that they've built. This is probably my favorite. They use a piece of the Shenzhou 7 rocket remains along with a bunch of plastic bottles and a part of a tent and a bag to create some really cool accessories. The project that was run for Hal Bottle was done by some partners of ours in China. So they're sprint-based certified. They run lots of sprint-based projects. And when COVID first hit, they took on this 2-week sprint with Hal Bottle. And I really want to share some of the stuff that they did. So there's the Hal Bottle CEO. She's a really visionary and super up-and-coming professional. She's, like many, when COVID hit, she realized that the strategy that she had laid out for the company had to pivot. And so suddenly the conversation changed, and she said it felt inappropriate to be just hammering with this hard sustainability measure. She's like, what do we do now, was basically the reaction. So she brought in the team at Voya, who worked on this challenge, which is kind of how might we provide these sustainable options for young people, and then but get this lifestyle that's young and fun, but do it, and this is the big kind of qualifier, how do we do that in a COVID world? Because this project was just about 2 months ago. Now, the team that they pulled together, and this is an important piece of it, they had 11 members from, so Voya is the consultancy and Hal Bottle being the firm. So most of them were from the firm. So I think they had sort of 9 members from Hal Bottle, including the CEO and the COO, which is interesting. The duration, just 2 weeks. And then their field research, 20 customers from various industries in a big age range. Now, this taps into that point that was brought up in our chat here earlier, which is how do you get that empathy? How do you connect with people when you're working remotely? So those are the things, right? So should we tackle this big challenge now? How do we get that empathy, and how are we going to effectively, coach and guide these teams? That was what Voya was worried about. Guide those teams through this. The team did an amazing amount of work. So you look at their field research here. They collected a load of field research. Now, you're not supposed to be able to read any of that. It's very small, and it's also in Chinese. But the thing that we heard from them consistently as they were going through that process is actually conducting these user interviews via Zoom or whatever they were using actually worked well, because they were talking to people in the places that they lived. They were kind of getting this sense that they were capturing the sort of real person. It was easier to arrange, easier to organize. It was more flexible, and they got a wealth of observations right out of the gate. The insights that they came up with were really pretty novel, and they had a lot of them, some of which I know they've got future projects they're launching off of. So some of this novelty of cooking meals at home, people buying not because they need something, but to support organizations, a few other things. But the big one, though, was this last one about people being really keen to connect still on things that are related to their values. So not that people were just in sort of COVID, tunnel vision, but there's still a real desire to interact with things that supported their values. Maybe maybe they weren't out shopping for those things, but they still wanted to talk about them and engage with them. So there's an application called AntForce that basically rewards sustainable behavior that you log, and then it does this by planting trees, and you get these points. So it's an app that already existed. What they did as part of their project, which you see generated a ton of ideas and prototypes, they grabbed that insight around people wanting to engage on things that are aligned with their values, and they came with a really cool solution that basically allowed those users of AntForest who were already kind of ecologically tuned in to use the points that they gathered there to get discounts on anything that was coming from Hal Bottle, which was a pretty clever idea. And they had this Stop Plastic Day thing that they made a big event and really kind of did a lot of outreach around that concept. And this all happened within weeks, right? So keep in mind, this isn't something that was planned and built over months. They were able to quite literally double their revenue over the period of about 2 months from this initiative, which was absolutely staggering. They had new topics, kind of opened up the conversation with customers again that had kind of dried up. They found a way of discounting that felt authentic for them, and they've just really generally energized that community, but through a different channel and a different way of working and engaging. So really impressive project. It's a great firm there who led that and did the coaching over those 2 weeks with the team and got them some great solutions. But I think the big takeaways here are, the first and foremost, don't be afraid to tackle those big complex challenges remotely. I had a conversation with the woman who ran that project just a couple weeks ago, and her words to me were that because they were working remotely, said people were focused a bit more. They got higher quality of output because they were, not just always in a group brainstorm, but people were given some time to go off, reflect, bring ideas, independently into the mix, so that asynchronous working as well as the synchronous working gave them a lot more diversity of input and led to better outcomes ultimately. So don't be afraid to tackle the big stuff. This can work and does work really well. Remote user observation can work. We talked about that. Not unlike any other project or workshop, getting that senior leader involvement and buy-in is really essential. In this project, they had them as members of the team, but what we often see is inviting those senior folks in as observers, which is another thing you can do virtually that you can't do as easily face-to-face. You can give a sponsor or a senior exec sort of observer access, kind of like this window into your design studio where they can see the progress you're making, and they can kind of follow the red thread of the observations, the ideas, and the prototypes, and how they kind of came to be, as opposed to what often happens face-to-face is senior leaders don't see the results of a project until we're showing them the kind of the final piece. And we've found consistently that bringing them along through the journey really helps with that buy-in. And also too, got to really hand it to the team. And these are really extraordinary results. And we can't say there's any technological solution or approach that's going to guarantee that. They had really good people who were coaching these teams through that process, and just kind of taking some of these tips and methods that we've talked about today and just putting them to use in a really strong way. So guys, it's almost my time up here, but I just want to kind of wrap with a couple of kind of summary points. First is try to break out of that thinking of how do I do remote in the same way I do face-to-face. Look at those advantages we've talked about of going virtual, try to create them, try to build on them. Involving the right people as and when they're needed. Again, not being confined to that mindset of if we're going through this design journey, it's gonna be the same people from start to finish. More and more projects getting more and more flexible. We're moving people in and out as we need them, getting real diversity of input. Also, with diversity of input, that group and individual working. And for me, this has probably been the biggest learning over the last couple of years of doing this, which is if you combine that magic of having people together, to doing synchronous working, and then also that other type of creativity that comes when you give people time to reflect and go away and come back with their own ideas, you bring that together, you get greater diversity, you get more variety within the ideas themselves, and you ultimately come out with better solutions. We've seen it happen over and over again. For all those reasons, don't shy away from tackling those big problems. Get that buy-in easily and quickly by sharing it digitally with stakeholders. Don't wait until the end. And then also kind of scaling your approach, to the challenges we mentioned. Sometimes we'll work with a team. I mentioned we're doing that Smart Home of the Future project with a Saudi Arabian university right now, and that's something that's going over a couple of months. And we're having interventions along the way, all virtual, all the way down to a workshop that you can run in 2 hours, and just kind of keeping that the kind of front and center. What are we trying to achieve? What's the best kind of approach to use? What are the best tools to use as we go? And just being very mindful of that, not unlike you would with a face-to-face project or workshop. But guys, that's it for me. I hope that this has been useful. Hopefully you've picked up a few things that you can bring to your work of doing design remotely. And with that, I will hand back over to our hosts.
Thank you, Adam. I think that was a great session. Lots of insights, lots of learnings. So let's then switch over to the Q&A round. So we already have some questions coming in. Let's start with those. And for everyone else, if you have any questions, please go ahead, put them in the chat option and we'll take them up. So, all right, let's see. So we got a question earlier on. It said, how to build prototypes while collaborating in a virtual environment.
So how to build prototypes in a virtual environment. So without sort of diving into the application and showing you, basically the way you do it is you'll have a shared whiteboard or template maybe you're doing a storyboard, or maybe you're just, wanting to build out a visual representation of something. If it's a low fidelity prototype, especially, the best thing to do, we'll have, 3 or 4 people who can all be logged in at the same time, all working on the same shared space, pulling digital assets, and sort of mocking those up in real time. And what we see happens is those digital assets that maybe in a workshop you would have created, with paper and pen. The fact that you're building them digitally, they are a bit more convincing right off the bat. They're a bit more shareable right off the bat. They look a bit more developed more quickly. So we see that virtual prototyping really accelerates things. If you want to get into 3D modeling, if you want to get into more robust, higher fidelity, like CAD kind of stuff, that is something that you would do outside of the system, in a different sort of specialized platform, maybe even something like Envision, and then link that back into the workflow in the main project. Is how we see that. Hope that answers the question.
All right. Okay. So then we have one who's asking you, can we get an access to the sprint-based platform to try it out?
Sure, absolutely. If it's something you want to try out, we've got an email. It would circulate afterwards, I'm sure. Is contact your hosts here, and yeah, we'd be happy to let you have a spin with it.
Oh, that's great. Okay, then someone said, can you touch on how folks are doing virtual consumer interaction these days? So either via focus groups or in homes.
Yeah. So we just wrapped up a round of those with a client, and it's not without challenge, but the way we've been doing it is everyone's from their home. We'll set up special space inside of the platform where we'll have whatever concepts, prototypes, or whatever it is we want to get them to react to. And we just give them access to the platform and they join us. And then very much the way as we were talking about creating a shared prototype, we'll have a shared board that all of us are working within, and we'll just ask them to provide their feedback just using kind of digital Post-it notes. And we do sort of a little collaborative working session. So that's been the best way we found to kind of engage consumers. The one thing you can't get, which is frustrating, and we look forward to returning to, is a lot of that in situ observation when the home doesn't cut it, when you need to be sort of observing people in a shop or observing people, in a workplace. So those are some of the areas where we definitely, until COVID changes, we'll struggle.
Okay, so now next is, does Sprint-based enable creation of digital or clickable prototypes?
Say that again, please.
Does Sprint-based enable creation of digital or clickable prototypes?
Of a photo, let's see, make sure I understand the question so I don't answer it incorrectly. So the, sorry, so the question is, I'm sorry, I'm opening up my pane here so I can read it a bit more clearly. So we're talking about sort of photo, is it photo links that we're asking about?
No, so can we create clickable prototypes on Sprint-based, basically?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, okay, I'm sorry, I just misunderstood. Clickable prototypes, no, and really good question. So one of the things that when we built this, we decided we were not going to try to be all things to all people with the platform. Our goal was very much to provide teams with that workflow, so that workflow automation that moves them through the process, give them the guidance along the way, and then give them a good collaborative space to do those sort of essential bits of work. Now, if you want to talk about clickable prototypes, use Azure or Envision, those kind of platforms that are great for wireframing and all that stuff. Those can link right into the workflow. So we have teams using all kinds of different specialized prototyping applications, but they sit within the overall Sprint-based workflow. You just sort of click on one of those notes and it takes you there, so you can get that specialist functionality.
All right. So what is the ideal time frame within which to conduct a design thinking experience session in a virtual mode? So would it be 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours? What would be the ideal time frame?
That's a really good question. So we run, the shortest experience we'll run is what we call a 90-minute jumpstart, which is all about just orienting someone to this way of working. It's more like an online training. That's the shortest experience. If we're looking for a real solution, you know, if we've got a challenge we want to get some fresh thinking on, the minimum that we recommend is we do something called a solution workshop, which is it's 4 90-minute sessions, typically done over a week or two, where you're tackling a challenge, but you're doing it in these short little bursts with a bit of synchronous working when we're all together, as well as asynchronous individual working in between. But then you get sort of the kind of magic question of if you've got a really complex challenge and you've got a lot of people, can you do that in over 6 hours? Probably not. And that's where we usually have a question or have a conversation up front when we understand, to try to understand the sort of desired outcome. Do we need high fidelity prototypes? Do we need implementation plans? What kind of stakeholder engagement and user research needs to be conducted up front? We get that scoped, and then that allows us, just like any other project, to say, okay, this feels like 3 weeks, this feels like 6 weeks, and so forth. At that point, you're really starting to get into very similar kind of time frames as you would a face-to-face project, but just flows a bit differently. And as I said before, sometimes we find we make progress a little bit more quickly. Hope that helps.
Okay. So now we have one question, which is, I think, pertaining to the general COVID situation also, which said, how do you minimize digital fatigue, you know, in the absence of in-person connects and whiteboards?
Oh gosh, I'll tell you, that is a killer question. First and foremost, we very short sessions. 90 minutes is our absolute maximum for a single session. The other thing too, it's about short, sharp content and switching up the media. So if we've got 90 minutes with someone or a team, it'll be maybe maximum 3 minutes or so of actually communicating or teaching or explaining, and then it'll be, let's put people into breakouts. Let's pull people back. Let's show a video. Okay, now in pairs. Now get into a whiteboard. Brainstorm something, virtually. Let's vote. So you're constantly mixing the media and mixing the activities into short, sharp chunks is the main thing. But honestly, 90 minutes. No matter how amazing the session is, I think any more than 90 minutes, I think people do start to just wear out and glaze over.
Very true, very true. Okay, how to move from remote design thinking to remote design sprints? Any tips there?
So how to move remote design thinking to remote design sprint. So if we're talking about design sprint as, if we're talking about the sprint methodology, are we talking about the 5-step Google Ventures sprint method? Am I understanding correctly if that's what we're talking about? Yes. Okay, good. So yeah, I mean, one thing that we are able to do, we can run those that exact kind of methodology on the same platform. We sort of the default, what I've shown you here is the sort of a 6-step kind of classic design thinking process. The platform can be configured to do 5-step or a 3-step or whatever needs to be. So for a lot of our sort of larger corporate clients who work with us on an enterprise basis, we'll configure sprint-based to have their process, their tools, their branding, and one of the other processes, obviously, that people are looking for is that 5-step. So it's the same kind of configuration process that we go through.
Okay, I think we can take the last 1 or 2 questions. So, okay, here's one. How do we address remote empathy in a virtual world?
So remote empathy in a virtual, repeat that one for me again real quick, make sure I understand that.
How do we address remote empathy in a virtual world?
So, it's a great question, and there are some limitations. Definitely The ability to read body language is diminished to some extent. You know, and I think we've been getting creative with it in the sense that, you know, we've been finding the upsides of having those conversations with people who are often sort of, you know, in their pajamas in their living room, as opposed to being, you know, in a suit and tie in the office. We find that we're actually able to connect a bit more quickly. So that's one of the upsides. But some of the things you can do too is put that in the control of the user. So on this project I mentioned, this sort of smart home of the future that we're working on, we engaged about 80 people within the community there to get their ideas of what their, you know, what was working well and not so well from their current living situation. And we asked them to do a camera study where they were able to, over a period of days, collect their own photographs and tell us what they were thinking and feeling and enjoying and not enjoying, what was annoying or what was, you know, pleasant about this experience. And we did that as a pre-work component before we had the interview. So we were actually able to get that sort of input from them that we would have been able to do in person could we have gone there, but we had them do that first, so we had that richness when we actually had the conversation. That's one method that we use that worked well.
Perfect. Okay, let's take up one last question. So is it good to send out a set of survey questions which mention a goal, or do we just dive into a group working on the problem? You know, if you want to do such a design thinking session.
That's a really good question. I think I'm afraid I have to give you an unsatisfactory answer and say it depends. You know, we find that in general, I mean, depending on the audience, you know, in questionnaires, they tend to be somewhat, we find, you know, the things that you can observe that might be the most interesting are often the things that someone won't necessarily know about themselves or be happy to answer in a form. I mean, for one thing, that if you ask people, you know, what if you could, you know, change one thing about a product or service, they'll always tell you they'd like it to be cheaper. And you go, oh, okay, well that's, you know, that's wonderful. But what does that tell us? We find more of the jumping in and having some of that sort of real connection is more fruitful. Although again, because given that sort of pre-work thing we were saying, having the photos collected beforehand, a simple survey can be helpful too. Even if what it returns isn't sort of groundbreakingly useful, it is good in helping to focus the team on the kind of questions they're trying to uncover, and it's good for focusing the people that you are gaining empathy with on some of the issues that you're trying to engage with. Hope that helps.
Okay, I think that's perfect. I think that brings the session to an end. Adam, thank you so much for taking out the time. I think it was quite an informative session. The sprint basis seems to be a pretty comprehensive platform. And you know, if people do want to try it out, or maybe they can email us and we can see what we can do, or, you know, what can be done.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Even if you wanted to pilot something, you know, let us know, and we'd be happy to support you. So guys, thanks so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope you found it valuable.
Okay, so just one thing before we go off, everyone, I hope this webinar, you know, added value to you and it was interesting. And, you know, if you want to learn more about remote design thinking, then you can write in on this email, customer_relations@q-glue.com. You can even check out our website, q-glue.com, and we'll get back to you. Additionally, for design thinking, we have an open workshop coming up on 21st June. You can get more details on our website. We'll also share a link with you in the thank you mail, which will go out post the webinar. So lots of exciting stuff coming up. And thank you once again, everyone. Thank you, Adam. All right.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate it.